Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Lazio Lounge. Serie A finished, finally it's over, not the best season for Lazio. I'm here with Alasdair Mackenzie. Alasdair, what can we say about this lovely Torino-Lazio and the end of the season for the Biancocelesti?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think we need to spend ages analysing the game, to be honest, because it was a pretty ugly way to end what's been a pretty forgettable, let's say, league season. And an 8th place finish isn't something that anyone's going to be very happy about. So there you go. I mean, it wasn't a great position to be in the first place to end the season with a 7th place playoff, but then to lose it as well kind of tells you everything you really need to know, I suppose, about the way this league season's gone.
Yep, I think one of the biggest concern I have, Alasdair, is that for the 3rd consecutive season with Inzaghi on the bench, Lazio stopped playing, had a terrible finish of the season. The first year, if you remember, Lazio has...
Hello?
Hi, Mike. We have even Michael Di Mascio. Can you hear me, Mike? Are you there?
Yes, I can hear you. Unless can you hear me?
Perfectly. I was saying about the bad end of the season for Lazio, and this is the 3rd consecutive year with Inzaghi that Lazio have a terrible finish. The first year, Lazio was nearly fighting for the Champions League, then they give up and finish in the Europa League. Last year, everybody remembers, Lazio was pretty much safe in the Champions League in February, and then things from there went badly, and Lazio lost the Champions League in the last match, but lost points against Crotone, Sassuolo, and so on. Same thing happened this year. Do you guys believe it's something to do with Inzaghi, or what? I will start with Michael as you are here now.
Oh, no, I was going to turn it over to Alasdair because I wanted to make sure, Vittorio, that you had wished everybody a happy belated 26 Maggio. Did you do that? Can you at least tell me that you wished all the listeners a happy May 26th?
But it's the 27th, it's late.
Well, yes, because we were too busy celebrating the end of De Rossi's career yesterday.
You were. No, to be honest, Alasdair was, not me.
That's true. Alasdair, how was that? Was that a wonderful experience for you, or what? You know, he's such a legend and an honorable man, you know, when he's not swearing on the field or using bestemmie, and such a classy man.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was sharing a stadium with 60,000 Roma fans, most of whom were in tears. So, you know, it sounds like a good day out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. On May 26th, no less. It's something they've grown accustomed to, crying on May 26th.
I don't know if you read it, but on Twitter someone said, again, May 26th, all Roma fans crying, Andreazzoli crying.
That's right. Andreazzoli, too. Condolences to him. Empoli put up a great fight. It was a tasty day for the last game of the season. I know we usually talk about Lazio only, but it was fun watching and being quite content knowing where we stood with next season already and not having to worry about anything on the last day compared to last year, which was no fun the way it ended, as we already know. But yeah, condolences to the Romanisti out there, and welcome as well to the Europa League. They're going to enjoy starting in July next year for their qualifying phase.
I'm not sure. We have to see what happens with the AC Milan. Let's not forget that I fear that Milan will miss the Europe events for a couple of years.
Oh, that's true too. Yeah, well, I mean, if there's a will, there's a way. And I'm sure the Romanisti will find a way to make a mess of it anyways, like they usually do.
Probably. So, Alasdair, going back to Lazio finally, as this is Lazio Lounge.
Yeah, I'm here to derail everything like I usually do.
You're more than welcome, you know it. So, am I right to fear a little bit about Simone Inzaghi ending season, or you think that every season there has been a reason for this?
No, I mean it's an absolutely valid question, and it's one that a lot of people are asking. And you know, I think in my mind it comes back to the same old thing, to be honest, which is simply the fact that Inzaghi's not a coach who really goes in for the idea of focusing on one particular competition. He always says at the start of every season that he's going to try and get as far as possible in every competition. And I think there's a lot to be applauded in that. But then that obviously depends on the strength and the depth of the squad you've got, how far you can realistically go. And I don't think that Lazio have had a big enough squad. I think there's definitely things that Inzaghi could have done to have helped the league season go better than it had, and there's no real excuse for losing against Chievo and Spal and drawing the Sassuolo and all these other terrible results. But I think the effect of going into the knockout phase of the Europa League, going all the way to the final in the Coppa Italia, with a squad with the depth that Lazio has, ultimately everyone's a bit knackered by the end of the season. I think that's shown. So then I suppose you have to question whether he's right to do this every year and try and take every competition so far every year, and makes me think about last season and Maurizio Sarri being so kind of blatant about the fact that he was willing to sacrifice Europe in order to sustain a Scudetto challenge with Juventus. And he got criticised for that at the time, but I think a lot of people remember him for the fact he took them to a 91-point season and closer than anyone to toppling Juve. So, yeah, I think all of these things together kind of go to show that it depends on the squad you have. And in my mind, I just don't think he's had a big enough squad to be able to cope with going that far in all the competitions, and it shows by the end.
Yeah, and that would probably be the same sort of scenario as last year, where we came within an inch of the Champions League, and then you looked back at, was it really worth it pushing as far as we did in the Europa League and Coppa Italia, and then missing out on everything pretty much in the end of last year. Whereas this year, I would say I wouldn't look or to draw parallels that the ending of the season is similar to last year by any stretch. Yes, the results are the same in terms of losses, but considering the fact that our European qualification was already sewed up 2 games ago, it's no surprise to me we didn't put our best foot forward in the last 2 games. Who can blame the team? There's the Coppa Italia hangover. It was a chance maybe to roll out some Primavera players, which we saw. So I'm not too concerned about how the last 2 games went. I don't think it's a good indication of what there is to look forward to or how we can summarize the season. We won a cup. And I think Cherby summarized it best, that it's still a bitter end to the season, considering we had already put out our objectives. And this is kind of what we talked about. The team ultimately failed in their objective. They said at the beginning of the season the objective was to make the Champions League. They missed out on that, and it wasn't really close. They decided they wanted to lose to the likes of an already relegated Chievo, and for me, they decided what side of the fence they wanted to be on then. So there's a lot of work to be done in the summer, and I'm not surprised that we don't know who our manager is going to be next season, because to me, I think Inzaghi had already maybe made up his mind. Not already, maybe. He did make up his mind, I think, earlier on in the season when that phone leak came out of Lotito giving him, for lack of a better word, some shit for the way he behaved and perhaps maybe his complaints with the squad he was given to start the season.
I don't know if Inzaghi already made his mind. We're going to see, and we're going to see also which bench will be available for him, because there are a lot of rumors, Juventus, Milan, etc. But we're going to see. As Mike said, chance to see some Primavera. Alasdair, yesterday we saw Luan Capanni. What's your thought about him?
Yeah, I liked him. I mean, it wasn't much of him we got to see, which was a bit of a shame, actually. I kind of hoped that, given the way the game had gone and the fact that it's the end of the season and so on, that we might have been able to see a bit more from a guy like Capanni. But it wasn't the best start for him, because as soon as he stepped on the field, he picked up a yellow card for basically elbowing N'Kulo in the face. So it wasn't exactly the most auspicious first touch in Serie A football for a young player. But then what I liked about him was that he looked very up for it, obviously, but he was also kind of fearless in his approach. And I think some young players might be a bit overawed by the occasion, making the Serie A debut, or maybe want to ease their way into the game or so on. But it wasn't like that with him at all. I mean, like I say, he gets stuck in with a big challenge early on to lay his marker down, and then as soon as he got the ball at his feet, he had an effort from range, and it was a good strike actually. It wasn't too far away, so. There's not an awful lot we can analyse because we only got about 10 minutes of him, but I think there's seems to be a player there, and it's encouraging to see yet another youth player being promoted and given a chance in the first team. So, yeah, that's always a nice subplot to the season. But like I say, I think considering the lack of options we had in forward areas for the game yesterday, I think I would have liked to see see him get a little bit more time than he did, maybe.
Yeah, I would concur with that. One thing I will always say about Simone Inzaghi, regardless of where his future lies, even though I don't believe it will be with us next season, is he's always given a chance to the youth because he came up as a coach that way too with the Primavera, compared to his predecessor in Pioli, who never really gave any opportunities to the youth, and that was always seemed to be a knock on him. It's great opportunity for us to see the players. Unfortunately, like Alasdair said, Capani, outside of having a great number on the back of his jersey, and I hope he sticks with it because he'll be a club legend if he does half as well as the 71st minute number that he has. He has a bright future, but one I was disappointed was we had talked about it. What did we have in Guerreri last time I was on? And we saw precisely what we had in him last week, and maybe it was a jitters thing, getting caught up in the moment. I was disappointed with his showing last week. Going forward, there seems to be a little bit of a collection of youth with Armini as well as an approach going forward. There is a little bit of a collection, and that's kind of what you need. You need little pieces like that to build upon, similar to what we had before with Keita and Tunkara, where we knew, okay, great, we have these guys, and Onatsi too, to a lesser extent, when we actually had a better chance to watch them when they had the playoff, and they were attempting to win the league in the Primavera. So with Lazio going back to the A division of that, I'm excited for that, number one. Obviously, these players are good to get them there. But outside of that, yeah, there wasn't enough to really make any final conclusions on heading into next season.
I think one really important thing about Capani is people think he's a number 9. He's not. He's a trequartista. With Lazio Primavera, he had to play in that position because Lazio Primavera played with a 3-5-2 or 4-3-3 in certain occasion. So he's not the new Ciro Immobile. He's more like someone who can play in the position of Luis Alberto or Tucu Correa. He was playing there in Flamengo, so, if you consider him as a trequartista, he can be a valid add to the team. He said already, I don't know if next year I'm going to go to Alonso with the first squad. I hope so, because I think I'm ready, but we're going to see what's happened. But yeah, don't think he's a number 9. He's not. This is something, we all say that Inzaghi is good to give youngsters a chance, etc. But if they come in all the time in the last 7 minutes, etc. Yes, they made the debut, but they didn't really have chance to do that much. And in a match so useless like the one of yesterday, because, Lazio didn't have nothing to ask and etc. Then why don't you, we had 3 substitutions, we made only 2. Why don't you make Armini come in again, for example, or something like that? Why don't you sub Capani at the end of the first half instead of the last 7 minutes? We already lost 3-1. No one's going to care or complain Lazio lost because Capani came in too early. It's going to be exactly the opposite. Why Capani didn't come in earlier?
I think there are probably a couple of things he was looking at with that, though, which was first and foremost wanting Immobile to get a goal again before the season ends, which thank God he did, and then also this experiment of playing Cataldi in a more advanced position up as a kind of trequartista alongside Immobile, which is something we haven't seen this season and was quite an interesting selection. And I thought he actually did a decent job there as well. So I think he's probably wanting to get a look at those things. We know how loyal he is to Ciro and how desperate he was for him to kind of end this bad run he's been on in 2019. But yeah, I mean, I do agree with you. I suppose the flip side to that is the fact that Bruno Jordão was given a start when other players could have been given a position in the midfield, and I thought that was really encouraging. Again, though, I suppose he was substituted off when maybe he didn't need to be, especially because he was taken off in order to facilitate a change that put Dermisi out to the left and moved Lulic inside. And I didn't really see the point of that when I thought that we know what we're getting from Lulic. There's no need to give Lulic full 90 minutes. You can easily just switch Dermisi for Lulic and carry on. But yeah, I mean, Jordão's opportunity for me was probably the most interesting thing that happened yesterday, and probably the most encouraging thing as well. I mean, I don't know about you, Mike, but I thought that he's clearly a player with a lot of technical ability. I think he still seems a bit lightweight, and he kind of drifted in and out of the game a bit, but there are a couple of really nice moments, and he does look like a player with enough confidence as well. So I do hope that that's a signal that we'll get to see a bit more of him in the first team next year.
Yeah, I hope he finds his position too, because he had a similar debut to Capani, like you were saying, where he got stuck in right away trying to do too much and getting caught up in the moment. I remember him giving away the ball a couple of weeks ago and then having to track the length of the field just to win it back. Obviously, the desire and the hunger is there, but I feel like with Jordão specifically, he might be playing a bit out of position too. I'm not sure exactly where he is. And to go back to what Vittorio had said, and I'm glad that you showed him the flip side, that yes, Jordão started. So Inzaghi is keen to give opportunities to the youth. And is specifically what I was making the comparisons to were predecessors. So who's to know who's coming in next and where they want to play? Because we also could say that Murja didn't really give a fair chance this year compared to last year, but Inzaghi did, promote him and stick with him. That being said, I do hope Jordão finds his place, and on the 2/3 substitutions, to answer that, Inzaghi has made a lot of head-scratching moves, obviously one being sticking with Ciro through thick and thin, except when the moment really was on the line. And that kind of closes the loop on what we talked about the last time I was on too. Would he have the balls to take Ciro off? And he did. And it proved dividends for us with the win, because Caicedo and his ability to hold up the ball, he really stuck with Caicedo this season, and he rewarded him handsomely. And let's get the conspiracy theories going. You had said Ciro Immobile had a poor season, and I would agree with you. Ciro Immobile said today that he didn't feel that he'd have a poor season. He would sign in blood for 15 to 20 goals a season, but I say let the conspiracy theories start. Maybe the fact that he has another baby on the way, maybe that weighed on him mentally. These things always come out at the end of the season, because one year he's scoring 29 goals with ease. The other year, the next year, yes, okay, he's calculating, I scored 20 goals in total compared to all competitions. All of a sudden, he has to start combining competitions to bring up his goal tally to justify a season. But he can say whatever he wants. We know from the start of 2019 he struggled this season, and I don't know why. And I'm not about to find out. But let's start the conspiracy theories going.
Well, I think big part of this is because Luis Alberto didn't play as well, and Alberto was a terrific assist man last year, and as we had only one striker player playing, Ciro Immobile was the one that was getting the more benefit, and that's why he scored so many goals, I thought. This year, Luis Alberto didn't play as well as last year, plus he started playing in line with the midfielder, so it was harder for him to provide all those assists. And I think that's one of the reasons. The other one is Ciro Immobile probably felt the pressure. He wasn't so confident. He didn't have that killer instinct. All the chances he had, he missed 95% of them, so that's why he didn't score that much. But after that, you can say that he kept fighting like he usually did. He helped the team as always. I think, taking comparison, Mauro Icardi. Everybody's saying Mauro Icardi is a great striker, etc. But if he doesn't score, he's useless. And yesterday, not only he didn't score, he missed also the penalty. So, at the end of the year, of this year, you can say that Icardi was terrible. Ciro Immobile, he didn't score that much, but still was helping the team defending, etc. So, to be honest with you...
Think about that touch, though, he had at the beginning of the season against Napoli. Don't tell me that he lost something. Maybe confidence, yes, because I think that was still the goal of the season, the way he was able to take down that ball and cut between the two quality defenders in Koulibaly and slot home that goal. He basically picked up where he left off, so something was lost along the way. And it can't just be because Luis Alberto wasn't playing as well, because Caicedo was able to find his own route to goal in his own way without the help of Milinkovic-Savic, who was another person who struggled this year. Make no mistake. Other people will tell you he was midfielder of the season. I don't know what the hell they were watching.
Well, Serie A did. That's unbelievable.
Plus, Immobile has missed a lot of chances this season, particularly this year, that he would easily have scored last season. So, yeah, I wouldn't agree with it down to Alberto's drop in form. Of course, I think that's had a big effect on the team as a whole, because he created so many chances last year, and particularly from dead ball situations and set pieces. But I mean, Immobile's perspective, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I think you're right, Mike. I think, in my mind at least, it does appear to be a confidence issue, because this year he's been striking me, the way he's played, it's almost been like watching the Immobile who plays for Italy. The reason that all these kind of Serie A fans who never watched Lazio have been so critical of Immobile while he's been the best striker in Italy is because he's been putting in performances like that occasionally for Italy. And that has probably not been helped by the fact that the more criticism he gets, the less confidence he has with the national team. And then I kind of saw that happening a little bit with Lazio as well. With his body language was a bit more resigned, and he was snatching at chances. We talked about that last week. The fact that he either kind of takes his chances too quickly, or he holds on to the ball too long, and just wasn't judging situations as well as he used to. But yeah, in my mind, I think that, again, it's just a matter of it being a long season, hopefully, and he's been out of form, but he's been amazing for 3 years now, so I think we can afford him to have a drop-off for a few months. This is what normal players do, the thing that wasn't normal was him being unstoppable for 2.5 years. That's the unusual thing here, not him dropping off in form for a few months, so hopefully he can rest up over the summer and come back and do the same thing like he did with Napoli in the first day of this week.
Yeah, whatever was ailing him or troubling him, I hope it gets sorted out. It could very well be there was a niggling injury too, and I'm not about to be a doctor, but it doesn't take much for the common fan to see there was something different about the way he handled himself this year. Yeah, he was snatching at stuff. He was actually making the people around him worse at some times. I won't forget the Fiorentina game where he did score in the game, won a very nice goal, but he was also the reason why we didn't take home all 3 points by spreading the ball around and being a team player. So we got the best and the worst of him too at times this year, I guess we could say.
Well, I would say that all the top players of Lazio this year didn't perform as expected. I'm talking about Milinkovic-Savic, Luis Alberto and Ciro Immobile. I thought the best player was Correa, who didn't start a lot of matches till, December, January. So that's probably the reason why Lazio didn't reach the Champions League. And I thought Milinkovic-Savic started playing at the end of the season at his level, but on the same time Luis Alberto was heading down again. So I really believe there's going to be a sort of revolution this summer. I think one of the big pieces will leave, and probably one of the reasons why Inzaghi have not signed the new contract is because he wants guarantee that they're going to be good replacement, and this summer Lazio is going to be doing finally a transfer market at the same level of the other opponents and finally fight for the Champions League. Because I think the biggest problem of this year is coming out and say Lazio is fighting for the Champions League. I think this team didn't have the talent to fight for the Champions League and have to cope with the Europa League, had to cope with the Italian Cup. People say, yeah, Lazio shouldn't care about the Europa League. But if Lazio goes out in the group phase of the Europa League there will be much pressure on all the other tournaments because that would be a terrible performance. And a club like Lazio should be trying to win everywhere because we are not Juventus. We didn't win that much. So even if you win a Europe League, that's a big achievement, like the Coppa Italia is. So I agree when Inzaghi says, I want to fight for everything, but you have to provide him with the right players. Durmisi can turn out and be a decent player, but it's not buying 7 Durmisi that you fight with the same team against Roma, Milan, etc. You need to buy 2 Cucurella level players, not 7 Durmisi players. Alasdair?
Yeah, I think that that's essentially it. It's unreasonable to ask for a top 4 finish and not compete with the other clubs going for a top 4 finish in the market. I mean, the problem here is that you've got the absolutely exceptional, pretty spectacular exception of Atalanta this season, who've got the 14th biggest wage budget in the league and have managed to play a very, a unique style of football, a very attractive style of football, and end up finishing 3rd and getting the Champions League. But I think that's the exception, obviously, rather than the norm. And yeah, I think you're right. You don't get Champions League signed by signing Riza Durmisi. That's not the move you get. You get there by strengthening your weak spots. And our weak spot for the last 2.5 years, 3 years, has been the fact that there's been no valid alternative to Ciro Immobile up front. Caicedo's improved this season, but that doesn't forgive the fact that they failed to bring in a Vittorio Immobile again last summer. That's still something that would have helped us this year if we'd been able to replace Immobile when he's out of form for a more prolific player, or a player who's champing at the bit to get a chance of scoring when they do get their chances. So, it's pretty clear cut, and I can absolutely understand why Inzaghi would be wanting to get promises, to get reassurances from Lotito before he agreed to a new contract, because it's just going to reflect badly on him. I'm not saying this is a defense of how he's done things this season. I think he's made a lot of mistakes this season, Inzaghi, but I think for him to continue onwards, it's still unfair on him to say that your target is a top 4, and yeah, we're not gonna even try and compete with Roma, with Napoli, with Milan, with Inter. These are the teams below Juventus that you need to get past in order to get these places.
I'm going to take the opportunity without getting too bogged down in the mercato madness, because we have all summer. And I have all summer to torment you two with all my theories and coming back onto the panel as we see how everything unfolds. But I'm sticking to what I think and what I say, and that is that this team will restart probably with a facelift without Inzaghi moving forward. And I can just see the whole change in mood. It went from Lotito starting off the season upset with him because of the injuries to Berisha and maybe whatever Inzaghi was complaining about that he didn't get over the summer, to Inzaghi heroically winning the Derby, winning the Coppa Italia, and the mood changing to Inzaghi is like a son for me, and blah 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 blah. I find it funny, and now Tade expecting that Inzaghi is going to stay. I think had we not been successful in winning the Coppa Italia, I think we'd already be talking about a new strategy, a new manager, and all that, and how funny things happen and how quickly the mood changes. Now all of a sudden, it's Inzaghi needs assurances, needs guarantees, and now Inzaghi's holding all the cards. And I'm interested to see how this plays out, but I won't be surprised when I hear that they've gone separate ways a year early from his contract. And just think about all the shit he had to eat before coming here with the Bielsa stuff. And Inzaghi, for all his criticisms, has done a great job. In fact, a miracle considering he's beaten Juventus a few times, not only winning the Supercoppa, he's got 2 pieces of silverware here. I will hope we do continue on with him, regardless of any head-scratching moves he's made this season, because I know what the alternatives are with the type of budget that Lotito will want to spend on a coach. And outside of maybe Mihailovic taking a pay cut, there wouldn't really be anybody appetizing for me that I would like to take. And I would disagree with you as well, Alasdair, that I think what they didn't do in the summer, aside from replacing Vittorio Immobile, and they continue to make this error, is finding a suitable defender to play with, either De Vrij and now Acerbi. I know Bastos is a killer, and he should be playing in the midfield or even as a striker, because that really is our vice immobile going forward, would be Bastos. But in all seriousness, we really don't have a defender capable of playing beside Acerbi. Luis Felipe was groomed to be that person. Injuries have set him back, and I hope that still is our future. But if we want to contend for the Champions League going forward, and I'll leave it at this, we need to, invest heavily in a sufficient defender, somebody who is capable of playing in Serie A, someone who can play alongside Acerbi with the same sort of commitment and desire that he showed. Now, that is a person who wanted to play every single game. Obviously, with his Ironman record, he wanted to do that. But even after that was broken with his red card against Napoli, he wanted to continue to play right up until the last day, whether the game was important or not. So I'll leave it with that. It was a pleasure being with you guys on this season, and thanks for having me, and I hope you'll have me back.
We'll talk about it.
Thanks, Vittorio.
I'm
going to have to think about it too. Like Inzaghi, I got to negotiate. I need some guarantees from you guys going forward that we're going to do the recordings at appropriate times on my schedule as well.
I already contacted Sinisa, don't worry.
Okay, great. Thank you. Take care, guys. Ciao. And remember, a Coppa in Faccia is forever.
Yep, absolutely.
Cheers, Mike.
Thanks. Alasdair, I agree with Mike saying that Lazio need a defender. The problem is, I don't think that's the only thing Lazio need. I think, especially, and this is probably going to be the biggest topic of the summer, if Lazio sticks with the 3-5-2, I'm not sure about that, but if Lazio sticks to the 3-5-2, I think Lazio need a couple of wingers and a vice immobile. Do you agree with me on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would agree with everyone. In terms of, I think that, it comes back to what I was just saying. I think generally the team needs just an injection of quality throughout the squad, and I think that for all his qualities, Senad Lulic is beyond the point where he's a player who's going to take us to the Champions League. He shouldn't be the first choice in that role for me anymore. We need another starting right wing back. I think Marisic and Romulo, neither of them are Champions League style quality wing backs. I agree with Mike. I think we've needed better quality of defenders for quite a long time, and you've been able to tell that from the fact that it's been an unbelievable amount of rotation in that position. Other than Acerbi and Radu when fit, the partner for those two has changed time and time again this season, because no one's really been trusted with it until Bastos has been in good form recently. But then, throughout the team really, and then when you get to the actual the issue of quality in depth, then that's a whole other question. But I think even the starting 11, it just needs a general refreshing. But yeah, I think that for me, the wing backs are the biggest priority at the moment. Vice Immobile, obviously, I've already said that. But beyond that, the wing backs on both sides, I just think aren't good enough to do what you need to do in Serie A at this level, to have the pace and the quality and the stamina. It's a really difficult role. And it's a role that needs covered this summer, because the combination of Lulic, Dermisi, Marisic, Romulo, I don't see that getting us into the Champions League next season.
You forgot Lukaku. He said he's coming back.
Everyone forgot Lukaku. I told you, at the Coppa Italia final, everyone forgot his name.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Super Coppa Italia hero. Come on.
Exactly, yeah.
Seriously, do you believe in him, first of all, staying at Lazio, and second, able to come back to the level we saw him a little bit last year, 2 years ago?
No, I've got reason to believe that if it was up to the club, he wouldn't be there anymore anyway. He would have gone, if not in January, then last summer. But he's still there. He can say what he wants. He has to sound like a professional, and he has to remind people of his existence. So, and it's good to hear that he wants to be involved, but that doesn't make it any more likely that he will. In my mind, I can't see him getting away back into this team. But I'm absolutely happy for him to prove me wrong. But yeah, I can't really see it happening, if I'm honest. The one thing I just wanted to move on to is that just picking up on that kind of little conversation there about the defenders. It's interesting, despite all of this, right? Despite the fact that we lost our best defender last summer in De Vrij, obviously a very capable replacement in the Acerbi came in, and then there's been this unbelievable rotation of players between Bastos, Wallace, and Felipe and Patrick to come and make up the rest of that defence with Radu. But this is the only part of the team that's improved this season. Lazio have ended up conceding fewer goals this season than we did last season. And, considering the gulf in points from 72 to, what did we end on, 59, was it? Yeah, 59. It's kind of surprising you pick up so many fewer points to end up conceding fewer goals. So, I don't know, what do you make of that? Do you think that's goes to show that progress has been made, or is it kind of a freak thing?
No, well, we knew that, and Inzaghi said that he tweaked a little things when the team was defending. The two wingers were playing differently, was trying to help more the defense. As we all said, Acerbi is a better leader than De Vrij, and De Vrij tend to forget his man when he's in a marking situation, while Acerbi is not. So I think that helped for sure Lazio. And then the other thing is, if you remember last year, Radu was playing terrific, but on the other side we had a lot of problems. This year, Radu lost something, I would say, but on the other side, Bastos played well. Felipe Ramos, when he was able to play, played well. I thought the only defender who didn't play that well was Wallace and Patrick when he had the chance. So I think overall Lazio defense was better, and but that was also one of the focus that Inzaghi had. So that makes sense. All the midfield was more focused on giving extra coverage to the defense, I thought, this season, except the last part of the year. So I think we improved, but it was a general improvement. Obviously, Bastos played much better, and I think Acerbi was an improvement compared to De Vrij.
But do you think there's any argument that improvement in defence, or those tweaks in defence to not leave them as exposed as often, do you think there's an argument that has contributed to the attack being so much worse than it was last year?
I think it does, especially the wingers. We often see Lulic and Marusic too far away from the strikers this year, and this is because they were starting from far behind when Lazio was counter-attacking. So I think that made a little bit of sense, and that's maybe one of the reasons. But for me, the main reason was last year Immobile, Milinkovic-Savic and Luis Alberto played terrific football. This year they didn't, and that's why Lazio didn't score that much.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the underperforming of players has been the single most damaging thing this season, I suppose, is the underperforming of key players. But an argument I've seen thrown around is the fact that the key players we talk about, Milinkovic, Savic, Alberto, Immobile, the level of underperformance kind of almost matches the level of overperformance from last season. When those guys kind of all had the season of their lives, and they're probably punching above their base quality, and now they've gone below it. So
I don't agree totally on that. I think Milinkovic-Savic has the talent to become one of the best midfielder in the world. And let's not forget, this season he didn't play great, but who scored against Inter in San Siro? Milinkovic-Savic. Who come in the Coppa Italia after not playing for 1 month, something like that, come in and score at the first ball he touched? Milinkovic-Savic. You know, he's the type of player that can make a difference. If you talk about Luis Alberto, I think Luis Alberto is a typical player that has an incredible talent, but tend to hide himself in a big occasion. If he's not feeling 100% focus, etc., etc. So last year he played incredibly well because he was focused, everything was going well, etc. This year we saw probably the real Luis Alberto. And same thing with Ciro Immobile, you said it, Last year was unbelievable. This year he had a period where he didn't score that much, he didn't play that well, but it's what often happened to strikers. So I think it's fair to say that, but not for Milinkovic Savic.
Yeah, fair enough. I just wanted to bring up that we had a comment on Twitter from Benham Haydar Shah. He's saying, "Do we need to get at least 4 new players for our starting 11?" He's suggested a left wing back, right centre back, and left centre back. So pretty much what we've just been talking about. But just wanted to give that comment a shout out. Because he says as well, Radu gets injured too often, and Acerbi's played 50 matches for us this season, Radu 33. I think, it's a good point to bring up that Radu, that used to be a big issue for him, was his injury problems, and last season we didn't really get that, and we got a tremendous season from him last year, but we've seen that starting to happen again this year. And again, with Acerbi, we've talked a lot about the fact that he is this, as Mike put it, he's this Iron Man where he never stops playing and he wants to play every game, and his record is incredible. But again, it's kind of like the Immobile thing all over again, where you can't rely on that. It's not enough to say that we've got this guy, he's going to deliver us consistently for 50 matches every season at this level. We can't rely on that being a thing. I mean, anyone can get injured at any moment. So I think that's yet another argument for strengthening defence more, is what happens if there's a serious problem with Acerbi. Well, then Felipe steps in there, but then we're very stretched with our other options who can play either side of him. So yeah, I'd agree with Benham. Like we already said, I think that the defence and the wing backs definitely a priority in terms of improving the quality of the squad.
Yeah, one thing really important is, unfortunately, Radu is not getting younger, and especially this year, you can see the difference. He got injured a lot. He made some mistakes that he didn't make last season. You can rely on Radu playing a lot next year, so that's why you have to look to the future and find some replacement. That's why I was hoping to see Armini playing yesterday, because he played really well against Bologna. Maybe playing against Torino would give us more details about his chances of, starting playing with the first squad next year. I'm not saying starting, but start to train with the first squad. Acerbi, let's not forget, this is the first year in 4 years that Acerbi missed a match. So it's not a surprise that he was able to play so many matches this year. But still, you have to think about someone coming in. We hope that Wallace will leave the team, so we will need a replacement there. I think a couple. So, and again, we need someone who can come in and compete for the starting job, not just Radu is injured, okay, he plays. No, it's someone that can fight for the starting spot with Radu or with Bastos. That's the biggest challenge we have to consider this year.
Yeah, I just wanted to read out a couple more comments, because we asked people on Twitter yesterday, I think it was, how they felt about finishing 8th, which is a dangerous question to ask. But anyway, I just wanted to read out a few of the responses here and see what you think. Greek Stav said, "What a weird season it's been for Lazio. Something obviously didn't work out right. The league campaign can't be described as anything but disappointing. 8th place, 59 points and 13 defeats." Alexander Mikkelsen said, "8th place is miserable. Ever since the derby and the Inter win, the season hasn't been impressive. Cup of victory barely saves the season. Looking forward to summer mercato and start of the new season." But then we also got a comment from Avesto, whose take on it is a bit different. So he said, "Season was up and down way too much, that's true. But look at it this way. Would you trade 8th for 5th or 6th without lifting the Coppa? History records titles and cup winners at most, along with the losing finalists. That's just how it is." So I suppose this is the kind of argument most people have been having, is whether or not the Coppa Italia makes this makes this a good season, and we can get into that. We're going to do a season review next week, so we don't have to do that whole thing now. But I just wanted to ask you, first of all, how you feel about 8th place if you're with Alexander Mikkelsen and Greek Stab thinking it's miserable, or if you're thinking about it more in terms of that it doesn't really matter if it's 5th or if it's 6th or if it's 8th.
Talking only about Serie A, it has been a terrible season for Lazio. Overall, you have to give a good judgment for the season because Lazio won the Coppa Italia, and let's not forget, and this is something weird, Lazio won the Coppa Italia beating Milan and Inter, and playing twice against Milan, they never scored, and against Inter they scored at the last second with a penalty, a dodgy penalty. So it's unbelievable and against Atalanta, who's the top scorer of the season, they didn't score in the final. So it's unbelievable that Lazio defense was great in the Coppa Italia and average in the Serie A. So it's like it was another year in Coppa Italia. So that's weird. But the funniest thing of this season, Alasdair, is Juventus won the Scudetto. Do they say it has been a good season? No. Napoli arrived second. Are they happy? No. Atalanta, obviously, they're celebrating. Inter, 4th, they're not happy. Milan, they're very disappointed. Roma, they're very disappointed. It's funny. Who's happy about this season? Not many teams. So it's really bizarre. I don't remember something like that happening in the past. Obviously, Lazio fans are not happy. They won a title, so that's saved the season, I would say. And as Lotito tend to say, this is, in football, you have to win. You don't have to arrive close to be remembered. And so winning the cup is important. But still, I would wish to see Lazio reaching the Champions League, not fighting for the Champions League spot.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying for a while that it's been a really strange season in terms of the fact that none of the big teams, I suppose the traditional big six, have had a good season. None of these teams will look back on this season fondly. Absolutely none of them, which is really, like you say, is an absolutely bizarre position to be in, really. Considering especially that you've got Juventus winning the league by miles and still not being particularly happy at the end of it. So yeah, it has just generally been a bit of a strange campaign, and yeah, the Coppa Italia was fantastic. The thing I found strange about this season has been that although obviously last season in general, week by week, we were a lot more entertained and we were a lot happier because the team were getting better results and they were scoring more goals, and obviously they took us right to the wire with the Champions League race. But despite that, this season has probably produced more one-off highs than last season did. In terms of the 3-0 Derby win and the Coppa Italia win, those are probably bigger highs than we got last season at any point, which is a bit of an odd thing. I mean, obviously beating Juventus away was great, Supercoppa was great, but I don't think they really match those two games I'm talking about. So, yeah, all in all, it's a bit of a strange one. It's going to take a while to digest, so I suppose that's another good reason for us to wait another week before we take a proper good look at it and get our teeth into all the different arguments.
You know what is going to be very different this summer, and that could change a lot of things? The fact that we normally know what Lazio is going to do this transfer market, but there are two big teams that this year could really be in big trouble. And I'm talking about Milan and Roma. Roma failed to reach the Champions League, and we know that this is going to cost them a lot. They will have to sell big players. We don't know how much money they'll have to sign players. Milan will be even in a tougher situation. And do we believe Atalanta is going to be able to replicate the success of this year? I hope not. This really means that if Lazio does a good transfer market, there's a big chance that Lazio reach the Champions League spot this season. But will Lazio do it? We don't know.
Yeah, we never know. There's so many ifs and buts between now and then. But yeah, I mean, like, basically, to summarise, I don't think anyone's going to be very happy with 8th place. There's nothing to be particularly happy about with that. And the Coppa Italia has helped kind of mask it. It's helped stick a plaster over the wound a bit, but yeah, it's not good enough from anyone, from the players, from the coaches, from the club hierarchy, from Iglitare. No one has performed to the best of their ability in making this happen. So, yeah, all-round improvement needed.
Yep, absolutely. It's needed. Alasdair, I think we can wrap it up here after season ending, and we're going to do a season review as soon as possible, and we'll let you know about it. And we're going to publish on our social account, to make you vote the best player for the year. Alasdair, as usual, thank you very much for joining me. And guys, you know where to find us on Facebook, on Twitter. Subscribe to our iTunes, and please rate and review the podcast if you still haven't done it. You can subscribe to our Spreaker channel and on Patreon at patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Thank you very much, guys, and have a nice rest of the week. Bye.